Sheesh. I used to never be.
Alright, let's try it again.
Really? And now you have two. Oh, man. Okay. Alex, am I like super loud or is it just me? Because I can turn myself down, but do I sound louder than everybody?
A little bit.
I'm number one? Of course I am. Okay. Test 1, 2. Much better. I don't feel like I'm screaming at myself.
Can you turn mine down a little bit? Please.
Yeah. Try.
Hello?
No.
A little bit, turn it up just right there. That's good.
Okay, Crystal, go ahead.
Hello.
I'm gonna turn you up a little bit. Okay, there you go. All right. I don't have my pillow. It's all you. You want me to do the countdown? Yeah. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Bang, bang.
Hello.
What's up?
Can't believe you beat me here today.
I know.
That
Crazy,
never
huh?
happens.
I
yeah.
know.
How'd that work out?
It's been a bad week. Been a lot of cancellations. So I was done today at 6, which never happens. But, we go on.
All right.
How was your week?
It's really, really long and exhausting.
So you're happy it's over?
I am.
Nice.
I am. For our listeners, this is a Friday night, and it has kind of been the week of hell.
Actually, for me, it hasn't been a week of hell. It's just been a week of just cancellations.
Is it because the weather's been so yuck?
Who knows? I'm tired trying to figure it out. So, I got some good news for you and I got some bad news for you.
Okay, I always like to lead with bad news and end on a good note.
Okay, so you want the bad news?
I do.
So the bad news is that you asked me to bring you 2 people to interview on our podcast.
I did.
And I got them.
You did. That's true.
Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So I didn't bring you not 1, but I brought you 2 of my family members.
You know, I have known you for, how many years did we decide the other day?
It was 2013, so it's 2019.
Do math.
6.
I'm proud of you.
6 years.
I have never met any of your family members.
I think you have. But
I met your father.
And my mom.
I have met your mom. That's true.
And I
have met your mom.
And I want to say, I think you've met our guest, who is my sister now, which is Dr. KRYSTLE Madrid.
Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I've met you before, though.
Probably. I usually meet people on the fly.
I'm pretty sure you better.
All right. Well, then I'm...
At the very least, an introduction of some kind.
I'm sure. Well, welcome. Nice to meet you again.
No worries.
Awesome. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
I am a clinical psychologist. I got my degree from Pepperdine University. I did my internship at Boston University School of Medicine, where my focus was on clinical forensic psychology. And I came back to California and did my postdoctoral fellowship at Harbor UCLA, working in clinical and forensic studies.
Okay. Now, what does that lead to?
Generally speaking, you work in the forensic world. So I was working for a period of time in Ventura County, where I was responsible for 75 patients that were in the state hospital system. So those are individuals that have committed a heinous crime of some kind, but at the time of their crime, they were deemed legally insane. So rather than spending time in a jail system or prison, they go to a state hospital. So let's say a typical human being who does something heinous, let's say a murder, and gets 15 to 20 years. Somebody who's deemed mentally insane at the time of the crime doesn't get those years. They just get committed to a state hospital. So it can
be... For how long?
It could be indefinite.
Oh, okay.
Right. So someone who's not gets a specific time frame. And someone who is found mentally insane gets no time frame. So they are, depending on where the crime was committed, they belong to that county.
Okay.
So I had all the Ventura County clients. And these patients are in a state hospital and they're required to be evaluated. So every 6 months, I would go and evaluate them and determine, are they ready to come out to the community or not? And if they weren't, they remain in the state hospital. If they're ready to come out, then they come out conditionally, in which case the county takes rights over them, so to speak, And once they're in the community, we do therapy, we give them medication, there's home visits, there's family interactions, and at any time, if we feel that they're slipping, they're not taking their meds, they start using drugs, they drink, there's a condition of rules that we need to sign. If at any time they're out in the community and they violate any one of those rules, we revoke them, they go back to the state hospital.
Got it. And so do these patients stay with you until their sentence is...
Well, they belong to the county, and then
Right.
once they essentially are always in a conditional release program.
Got it.
So
So do they stay yours? Do you still have these 75
no,
patients?
no, I don't. They stay with the county. So once I left the county, they stayed there.
Okay.
So I left the county and moved to LA County, and I worked in the jail system. So LA County Jail. So I worked at Twin Towers, and then I did the stint of my work there at Century Regional Detention Facility. So that's
Yes.
for women.
Yes.
So that's where I was working for the last 4.5 years, and recently made a transition, and now I work with the fire department.
Wow.
Yeah. So now
That's
I
a
work with
big change. So now you're not working with
Right.
deviants.
It is and it isn't in a way, because when I was working in the jail, my team consisted of sheriff deputies. So
Okay.
I was working alongside first responders. And although my training, a lot of it was in forensic, really the heart of what I love to do is trauma work.
Oh.
So
you like to get in and make a quicker diagnosis with a plan.
yeah, because in a jail, it's very quick. It's could be anywhere from 24 hours to a couple of years that they're there. So you really don't know. It fluctuates depending on their sentencing and where they're at in their trial. So you can't really do work. Like, you can diagnose, you could get them coping skills, you can work very quickly with them, but then you can't unpack anything. You can't really do the real work. So I was ready to transition, and in the jail setting, it's very acute, very critical patients, and I was just ready for a change.
Yeah.
And as odd as it sounds, I mean, you can only see so many murderers and robbers. Like, it gets old after a while.
It's like same old, same old.
In a way, yeah.
That's the weirdest statement I've ever
I
heard.
know.
I get it though.
It's just like work. You get used to it.
Yeah.
It's just like every day.
Oh my
every day is
gosh.
the same thing, in and out.
I
in
would
and out.
think you would have to have a change. There's only so many sad stories that you can hear
Yeah, and then
before it affects you, I would think.
I mean, in a way, but we are trained to help build up your stamina
Sure.
and don't take it home. But in reality, what the big problem of it is, you start to feel, you get cynical, you start to notice that your empathy maybe starts to wane and waver. You know,
I can imagine.
yeah, and then, you know, I like to travel a lot, so I would travel, and then I would come back, and I was like, oh, here we go again to cement walls, no windows, you know, you're in
It's
there.
a jail. It's
Yeah.
not. It's
Yeah.
not a good time.
You can't have your phone on you.
Yeah.
So when I would work, I would feel like I'm dead to the world for 4 days, because I would work 10-hour days. I go in, I would leave my phone in the locker, you do your work, you go out, maybe walk around for a little bit. There's really no cell service, so then it's like I was legit dead to the world
Yeah.
until I
Yeah.
would leave the facility.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, just because I know this, and I know I mentioned it to you, when you were working for your doctorate, right, in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So how was it? You worked in the jail system there as well, right?
Yeah, so I worked in a state hospital, and it was a hybrid. So it was a state hospital, but it was run by the Department of Corrections.
Oh.
So it's similar in that these are state hospital patients, and they also have a section of individuals who have committed some crime of some kind, and they're determining were they mentally ill at the time of their crime. So they were there, and we would test them to see are they or are they not. So we would get a lot of individuals that would try to fake it, because in their mind they feel it's easier to go that route.
Mm. And then,
Is it not easier? In your professional opinion, is going to county easier than serving your time in jail for your crime?
It depends on the individual. If you're someone who comes from a high profile gang and you're afraid of being in jail, then yeah, it is easier to be in a state
Sure.
hospital. There's a way you can.
But there are no freedoms
No.
there. Right.
No, but let's say you're someone that's not mentally ill. If you somehow game the system and you go to a state hospital, then you have a free range of the ward, essentially,
Oh, I see.
because you're not incapacitated in some way as somebody who truly is severely mentally ill and in this
Right.
place.
yeah,
right.
I've heard people that get locked up and they say they're gay because they're put in a gay unit. because they feel that they
There's
can't.
a gay unit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Mhm. I mean, it's not called that.
Well, I'm sure, but I
Right.
mean, they keep everybody separated.
It
Yeah.
depends. So
What's the reasoning for that?
safety.
Their safety.
Safety.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it depends on. It's not necessarily if they're gay, so to speak, but it's that, and also if whatever their crime is.
Oh, do they keep crimes together?
Not necessarily, but certain crimes have a higher level of being targeted.
Well, that's actually something I wanted to ask you about.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, if you're working in the jail system and you're working with heinous crimes, you must work with sex crimes.
Oh yeah.
Okay. How do you manage that without being angry?
Right.
Like,
So
I don't know how to word that without
Yeah, no, you're fine.
using more
so you have,
simplistic
like-
terms.
Like you have a pedophile in front of you, and you don't want to
Correct.
bash
That's
his
what I
head in.
would.
Okay, so
correct. Like I
right,
would have a
yeah.
hard time not.
I
having an
did
opinion.
too. I did too. So when I was in Boston, I worked at Bridgewater State Hospital. It's interesting enough. They made a documentary of that state hospital called Tilly Follies.
I was gonna say
Take the
that
Follies
sounds
one back.
familiar to
Yeah.
me.
So when I was working there, I loved it. You know, I always thought I wanted to go into forensics, but not until you're in it do you know, do you love it or not? And I loved it. It was very scary, don't get me wrong, but I really enjoyed it. And I would talk to myself, okay, I could do it, but I just can't work with someone who is a pedophile or has rape. Like that's where sex crimes, that's where I draw
Sure.
the line. So where I worked in the maximum security 2 unit, and we would get individuals that were from the B unit. So the B unit is when they just come in they're just came to state hospital.
Oh.
And they get the assessment, and then depending on their crime and how they're acting, they move them to different units. So they got moved to maximum security. And typically they come with their chart. And when they come to the unit, you introduce yourself to them and you essentially tell them the rules. Like, these are the things you're allowed to do, these are things you're not allowed to do. I'm your clinician, we're going to meet once a week. It's just orienting them to the whole situation. And then at that time, you tell them, okay, so tell me about your crime and tell me about your mental illness. And this person in particular came over, he didn't have his chart. But I had to get my assessment done. It's not uncommon that sometimes they don't come over with a chart because the clinician at the other unit still finishing up their notes, etc. So he comes in and he starts talking to me about his crime. We go through the whole process and I'm asking how he's doing. And he's telling me how upset he is because he's not around with his girlfriend, and he misses his girlfriend's daughters and his kids, and he's just crying. And it's just a really genuine emotion. And the longer you do this, you can tell between genuine and genuine emotions, right?
Sure.
So he's crying, he's upset, and I'm connecting with him. Like, I feel for him. We finish up. He goes on to his merry way, essentially, goes to his cell. And later on,
Are they cells?
Yeah, they're not really cells. They're rooms. Depends. There's certain single rooms and there's dorm rooms where there's 4 beds.
Okay.
It just depends on the person. When they first get there, they go single room because you want to observe them for a while.
Right, before they can be
with
put
other
together.
people.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood.
So when I finally get his chart at the end of the day, I read his crime, and this is someone who has raped women, who has essentially raped really young girls.
Oh.
So on the line, pedophiles 13 and younger, anything over that, it's statutory rape. So it gets dicey.
Line's a little blurred for
Right,
me.
right. And so when I saw that, I was beside myself, and I was like,
right.
oh, it was.
Because you connected.
I connected with somebody who had made that crime, and even now that I had his crime in front of me, and I knew his history, it still didn't matter. To me, so to speak. It mattered, obviously, because what he did was wrong, but it didn't stop me from doing my work with him. I knew I could still work with him. That didn't stop me. So, fast forward to when I worked in Ventura County. So like I said, I had 75 patients. So I worked all the state hospitals in California because they're spread out. And there's a particular hospital. I mean, most hospitals, for the most part, have some individuals that have sex crimes, but most of them are in a specific state hospital in Central California.
Okay.
And they're called sexually violent predators. And so my job was to
It's an accurate description.
Right. My job was to see them every 6 months and do an assessment.
It was your job to visit.
Yes, and do an evaluation.
Sex crimes was the one job you said you never wanted to do.
Right.
Understood.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to California.
Yeah. So And part of the assessment is having them talk you through the crime. Tell me about your crime. Tell me what happened.
Yes.
And yeah, in detail.
Like full detail?
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to.
Are you allowed to take breaks?
Yes, you can, but you don't.
Sure.
You want to get in and out because I would have a list of 5 or 4 people that I needed to get done.
Sure.
And then afterwards, I have to drive back to Ventura County. I'm not trying to stay there, so
of course.
it's like you want to get it. We would want to get it done quickly. So 6, 8 clients, you just want to like kind of power through them. So yeah, and part of it is to see, have they rehabilitated? Are they ready to come out to the community or not? So you're sitting in front of somebody and they're telling you about their crime, and so you have a 45, 55-year-old male, completely middle-aged, not in the best shape, talking to you about how a 6-year-old girl seduced him.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, because she was walking in front of him in a camisole.
But she's 6 and completely oblivious to her body.
Right. So my job is to then go with it.
See, I'm already mad and I'm not in front of anybody.
Yeah, I mean, there is a visceral reaction. Like,
Sure.
I do get the chills and like, this is disgusting, and I have to go with it in the sense, I don't have to go with it. This is my style. Like, yeah, I understand that. I see how that could be. What else does she do? And if you lead them down this road and they are going with you, you're like, okay, I got you. You're not ready to rehabilitate. You still believe that this little girl seduced you, versus you taking your responsibility for your own actions.
It's like the victim's fault.
Yeah.
Who's 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
You asked for the gas, I brought you one.
I mean, wow, yeah. How do you rehabilitate somebody?
You don't.
That has a preference to children.
You don't.
I don't think you ever can.
No, the research out there is there. It's
so
very, very
pedophilia
low.
Tends to stay in prison or mental hospitals.
Yeah, I mean, they have some people that are out in the community that are involved in these groups, and there's different things they can do. There's medications that they can take to lower their libido.
Sure.
Groups that they take. They have case managers, but the reality is that there's no fix for it, which is unfortunate.
Well, sure, I get that.
Yeah.
So if I pulled up my address and all the little red dots, it's just, it's not necessarily pedophiles. It's any sex crime is a little.
Yeah, anyone who
any registered sex offender, but it could be somebody who was having sex with their girlfriend in the backseat. That's a registered sex offender.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't need to freak out so much from all the red dots.
It's not. You have a sex crime, but you could be like, you were having sex with your wife in the car. A sex act. It's very unidentified. So,
but true heinous sex criminals generally aren't out in the community if they've been caught.
Yeah, if they've been caught.
There is no rehabilitation.
No. Normally there is not, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those dots are, it's not cut and dry.
Okay.
I think you have to go to, what is it, Megan's Law?
It's Megan's Law or something.
Megan's Law has an app, I believe, that you can go on there, and it will tell you if they were a child pedophile. It will identify them for you.
But see,
that's kind of scary for them, I would think, if they've been rehabilitated enough to be out in society.
Right, and the hard part about that also, too, is because, I don't know if it's Megan's Law, there's a couple of laws, but in particularly, they cannot be housed anywhere near a school.
Correct.
Right, and there's other things where they can't be around, but that's one I do know. So it's very difficult when they're coming out of the jail system or they're coming out of state hospitals for us to house them because they can't be housed anywhere. So what ends up happening is they end up becoming homeless. Sure. So now you have someone who's roaming anywhere, and there's no specific
and you
address.
Can't track them.
Exactly.
So we don't know where they are.
Yeah. So that's this gigantic problem with that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So let me ask you this question, since you can say you're an expert in this field. What's your take on them? A lot of people are now saying that pedophilia is a how do they word it? It's your sexual preference.
That's not okay.
There's this group that's coming out saying
hard
that.
Yeah. I disagree.
Totally.
If you cannot have you cannot have consensual sex with somebody under. I mean, I draw a hard line at 16 personally.
Well,
You're
there's
just
no
not
mistake,
mature
though.
enough.
There's
I know,
some states where you can like marry somebody
which
who,
is ugh.
like,
Why?
you could be 40 and marry a 14-year-old.
Yeah, I don't understand that. But
So
it's not your choice. You're taking somebody else's choice away. Therefore, it
no,
can't be
I
a choice.
you know how I feel about that. I completely agree.
I
So
know.
what's your take on that?
That these are individuals that's what they love to do, and they are trying to find a way to justify it, and that's their justification. And they use the Bible, they use olden times where people would get together with really young children, or not young children, but like 10-year-old or 11, right? But that's because people weren't living for a long age. This is the time where we're at right now, is people have a longer life expectancy. Before they didn't. So they're using specific situations to try to justify their negative feelings and their negative actions. But everyone does that.
Not true, but I mean, it has to. At one point, I would think that somebody or government, because they're into everything, would come up and say, "No, this is not."
Well, government has
But
said
they
that
have,
it's not.
yeah.
This is just someone's voicing their opinion.
Right.
But it's gaining track now, because like you start hearing it a lot now. I mean, which is just.
I mean,
I don't know.
I haven't heard it a lot. I heard it 10 years ago. I heard that argument.
I just heard
Was
it
it
last
10
week.
years ago? When was Measure 8 up? Was it 2008 here when it was legalizing homosexual marriage?
I have no idea.
Gosh.
Oh, I think
It was 10 years
I think
ago?
I think it's 2008.
So at the same time that was going on, this same group that you're discussing tried to get it passed that it was okay to have sex with somebody as young as 12 because it was a consensual relationship.
Well,
it was coming up at the exact same time, and they didn't even brought it all the way to Sacramento and they got kicked out of court as like this is not even something we're discussing.
No, what
It's
I
not
heard
on
was
books.
it was actually somebody actually came out and said, "Look, pedophilia is your sexual preference." Like 2-3
Sucks
weeks
to
ago.
be you. Sorry.
And they
It is their sexual preference, but their sexual preference is against the law.
correct,
Well, it's morally wrong.
but
It's just morally wrong.
but what they I agree with you, but it sounded the way they were trying to say it was that they're trying to justify what they're doing.
Of
They're trying to
course.
normalize it.
Yeah,
Of course.
yeah, which is
Of course. I recently read a book that Plato was known for younger
boys.
young boys, and a lot of people use that as a justification because this amazing intelligent man, and most cult leaders actually have a preference to pedophilia.
The Romans did it.
Well, of course they do, because you get a young person. It's easy to manipulate them. They are adoring you at every turn. Anything you ask of them, they will do.
Correct.
It's essentially the perfect person to have if you're a cult leader.
Yeah,
And
of
you
course.
wanna
Yeah, it's
dominate over
pretty
someone.
rampant in cults in general that there is pedophilia.
Well, not only that, you hear about all these cult leaders that has sex with all the wives
Mhm.
because he has to have
Well,
sex
yeah.
with all.
I mean, but that's
So-
more of a narcissistic
Yeah,
personality
but that's
disorder.
his sexual
than-
preference that he wants older women compared to younger girls. right?
But it's rare that it's
I mean,
older
from that,
women. It's
yeah. I mean, from that standpoint, I get it at the same time too. So this is where I guess the clinical side comes in that this is somebody whose sexual preference is to be with someone who's younger, right? And everything around them is telling them not to do it. It's legally not okay. It's morally reprehensible. Society's gonna look down on you, and yet you still have this preference inside of you, and that's your desire, and you can't act on it. So I could see why they would want to make moves to justify it, to get rid of the law that's hindering them from acting on their preference.
And I believe there's some states that are doing castrate, right? Do castrate you? Or they were talking about it?
medically castrate. You mean?
Yeah. I thought it's
They can't force you to do
talk
that.
about it, right?
There's an option.
It's discussed, but it's, to the best of my knowledge, no state has actually passed that.
No.
But you do have the right to request it.
oh really?
Yeah, you have the
Yeah.
option.
So let me ask you this: out of all the times, there has to be a certain percent, or maybe there isn't. did you ever interview any of these clients and they were able to rehab themselves?
No.
Wow.
Well, that makes sense to me. If this is your sexual preference, that's not going to go away. And if you've already acted upon it once
Mm-hmm.
or multiple times, you've already justified it that it's okay to do it again. And no matter how hard you resist it, at some point you're going to remember how easy it was to do it before. And you're older, wiser. It's easier to manipulate somebody into that situation again.
And they got the taste, so now they're hooked.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have had clients that struggle with it, that completely struggle with it, and are burdened by the fact that they feel this way, and burdened by why they like to do that, and yet still like to do it. So it's an internal struggle within them, and it's rare. I mean, it's not a high percentage.
Wow.
Is it an actual mental disorder?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the rate of sexual abuse in this country makes it seem that it's more normal than I want to give it credit to.
I wouldn't say normal. I think it's more rampant than than what we're aware of.
And is it always pedophilia or is it domination sometimes?
It could be domination. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because it's what did we say the statistic was the other day? It's like 1 in every 5 women have been sexually abused at some point in their life.
Yeah, I just think that now it's just more in our face just because of, like we talked before, social media. You hear about it so much quicker.
And I think
so
we
much
should be
faster.
more aware of it. I think
100%.
we should know what's happening out there.
Absolutely.
So, coming back,
Okay.
now that you're working with the fire department, what types of things are you working on? Since you're probably not working with sexual deviants as much. I'm hoping that you're not working
I
with the
hope
sexual
that doesn't
deviant
happen.
department in the
I
fire
know. No,
fire
they
department.
don't have a department. Mainly doing a lot of psychoeducation. So right now, nationwide, more firefighters are dying by suicide than by line of duty death. And that's because there's a higher rate of anxiety and depression that goes untreated due to the culture. The culture is suck it up. This is what you signed up for, so deal with it. And in some ways that makes sense because yes, they did know what they were signing up for. But on the other hand, what's happening is they're dealing with a lot of trauma on a day-to-day basis, multiple times a day, because, firefighters come into your lives at your worst time, generally speaking. So they're seeing a lot of things. And before, when the fire department was developed, it was for fighting fires. And now the runs that they go on are more medical. So there's a shift. And so there's a lot more calls. So more stressors, less downtime, and they're away from their home a lot. So there's a lot of relational issues and communication breakdowns. So most of the people that I see are couples therapy.
Okay.
Because they lack communications and infidelity is rampant in the fire service. 74% of firefighters cheat on their significant others. 1 in 3 get divorced.
Wow, those are really crappy numbers.
They're really bad numbers.
Yeah.
So that's what I work on.
Okay.
Is relational issues, education, psychoeducation. How do you communicate? How do you recover from infidelity? How do you rebuild your life together?
Do some of them have or show signs of PTSD?
Mm-hmm. They do. They may not meet the specific diagnosis of it, but they are experiencing symptoms of trauma. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's based on exposed trauma, correct? Or what you suffered?
Yeah.
PTSD?
Yeah.
Correct.
Right. So it's you experienced something directly.
Right.
Or you witnessed it.
Right. Like your friend dying or
Right. So generally speaking, most of the calls they go on that are traumatic, they don't really affect them as much. The ones that really affect them is if they lose a patient or if it's something involving a child.
I can
completely
see that.
understanding. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if they are young. There's mostly men on the fire service. We do have 3% of women, but generally speaking, if they're young fathers and they have young kids and the kid is the same age as their kid at home, and then that just drives it home for them.
Sure.
So they're affected by it.
That's human, right?
Yeah.
Right, that's a human reaction, and my job is to tell them that's a human reaction. So I have to get called out and say, this we went on this run, this happened, this guy is noticeably affected by it. And I'm like, okay, and like that's okay. Like he could completely be affected by it, it's all right. But they don't like that. They don't like to see emotion because then they think this person is not focused, he's weak. Because they work in teams, like I don't trust myself going on a call if he's not in the game. His head's not in the game.
Which I can see that.
Right. There's that aspect of it too. But what my job is to explain all of that and also tell them, actually, the one who's crying or not like getting weepy or getting a little glassy eyed, right?
Yeah.
Who's feeling it? I'm not concerned about that person. I'm concerned about the other guy who's on the wall, like avoiding eye contact, clearly trying to keep it together, but you know he's gonna crack at any moment.